Hey y'all, how are you doing today? I am Jayme May Bright, and I am super excited to introduce to you this brand new podcast that we are calling Making Motherhood Magical. Right? Simple, right in the title. That's what we're going to do. We are going to talk about how we can make motherhood magical every day. So, why? Why do we need a podcast about making motherhood magical? Let me tell you why we need a podcast about this. Because as moms, not only are we busy and overwhelmed a lot of the time, we often feel very isolated. And what's ironic is that these little things right here, our favorite phones, they're literally made to communicate with each other, yet this is what's making us feel further apart. So, my goal with this podcast is to put that down once a week and be here for each other and show up, hold space, be a safe space, and talk about some real shit. Not candy coating this. I'm not trying to be perfect. I don't even know what I'm doing. Honestly, don't know how to make a podcast, but I'm doing it anyway because I think it's important for everyone to have a place for their voice. And this podcast is not about my voice. This podcast is about your voice. It's about what's going on in your life. It's about the struggles that you're facing, the successes that you're celebrating, the struggles that you are trying to get past. And that's what I want for making motherhood magical. I want everyone to be able to come here and know that it's okay to have a dog laying down in the background. And, over here we've got imperfect furniture because you know what? When we moved that piece of furniture, I didn't want the doors flapping open. And so I put tape on them. And then when I pulled the tape off, so did the finish. It came off with the tape. But you know what? That's okay because I'm not curating something perfect. I am okay, and that is okay. You are okay, and that is okay. There is no Pinterest perfect life here. Like, there's no carefully curated fucking anything. It's just me, my life. I'm literally in here. I slept in this shirt. It's a Jimi Hendrix shirt, for God's sakes. Like, did I prepare for this? Sort of. Am I ready? Absolutely not. Am I doing it anyway? Absolutely yes. And that's what I want all of us to have the courage to do is to show up and just do our best, whatever that is. Sometimes your best is 110%, and sometimes your best is 10%. And that is okay with me. We don't all have to be 110% all the time. We could be 10% sometimes. And that's one of the things that I really, really want this community to build on is that idea of we can just show up how we are. Like back in the day, I don't know if churches still do this, but back in the day, I remember seeing on church marquees, come as you are. That's what I want here. I want you to come as you are because I'm going to come as I am. And I am far from perfect. I, in fact, am okayest, which is a big reason of why I'm here in the first place. I was going kind of through my mind the idea of starting a podcast and kind of trying to figure out what's my brand? What do I want to stand for? What do I stand for? What do I represent? What do I want to represent through a podcast? And this is what my wardrobe told me. This is funny. So I own a lot of clothes. This was my husband's, took it over. I don't put a whole lot of thought I buy things at thrift stores. So, with a thrift store, it's really luck of the draw. So you never know what you're going to get. But I noticed that in my daily life, there were two things that kept popping up every single day. Two things. I wore clothes from World's Okayest Mom, which is a fantastic Facebook group that I've been a part of it's been almost 9 years now. It'll be 9 years in March, I think. And the second thing that I wear all the time are shirts from another fantastic group called the Sisters Enchanted. So the two things that I identify myself as the most are an okayest mom and an enchanted sister. And when I thought about putting those two together to make a podcast, that's where we're at now. World's Okayest Mom taught me something that I, at 40 years old, didn't know that I needed. And that's grace. The two ladies that started World's Okayest Mom are two of the best humans on the planet. And these two women taught me what grace really is. And that is one of the reasons why that group is so important to me, is that I think that as moms, we do need to give ourselves grace. We need to give each other grace. Grace needs to be a huge word that we think about all the time. Because when you're in a place that you can give yourself some grace and you can give other people grace, giving other people grace to me is way easier than giving myself grace. That's why I keep saying giving yourself grace. I can give anybody else grace, no problem whatsoever. I cannot give myself grace very well. And that is what I learned from that group, is how important it is to be okay. Be okay with whatever it is. Be okay with yourself. Be okay with your kids. Be okay with being okay. So that's where World's Okayest Mom came into my life. Now to the magical part, which is kind of my favorite part. I'm not going to lie. Don't get me wrong. I love being okayest and I love being a mom. But I've been magical longer than I've been either one of those. I can remember back in the early to mid 80s. Yes, I'm not old. I have stories from the early to mid 80s. I'm just going to leave it at that. So I remember I was probably 4, maybe 5 years old, and we went to this amazing theme park that no longer exists. It used to be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, called Sesame Place. And it was an entire theme park based around Sesame Street. And Sesame Street was my freaking jam. So I was really excited to go to Sesame Place. Well, like, where's the magic in this? I'm going to tell you where the magic is. Just give me a second. At Sesame Place, they were doing a special kind of show presentation thing that had to do with how green screens work and how they use green screens in Return of the Jedi. So when they're like flying through the forests where the Ewoks are, that's what they were showing, was how they made that whole scene happen. And back in the early to mid 80s, to me, as a 4 or 5 year old, blew my mind. I thought it was so cool, like so cool. So we're going to this presentation and they have a green screen set up and they have one of like I don't know what it's called, the things that they drove through the forest, whatever they're called. They had one of those. And it was one of those situations where like one kid got picked to do it. Guess who that kid was? That kid was me. And the reason that I know that this is magical is because all I did was think about it being me, and then they picked me. And what's crazy is that happened my entire life with all kinds of things. I just manifested stuff out of nowhere as a child. And in retrospect, I see the magic in it. At the time, I guess I kind of just thought I was lucky. It never felt like an entitled thing, but it always seems so cool to me that I could just think of something and then it would happen. So while I have been okayist for quite a while, and I've been a mom for quite a while, I feel like I've been magical my whole life. And we lose touch with our magic, usually somewhere around puberty, when we start doubting ourselves, when we stop listening to our gut, when we stop trusting what we know. Usually happens around puberty. Ironically, also the time in our life when we start thinking we're not good enough. We start feeling like we need to live up to other people's opinions of us, that we start caring a great deal about what other people think of us. And so it's like we lose our magic and we grow our anxiety all at the same time. And I want to bring us all back to a place where we are that 4-year-old kid again, where we are that one that's like, hey, I want this to happen and then you watch it happen. Because that is how magic works. It really is. We have to open up in order to receive. And so until we can get to that point in our lives that we can take a deep breath, slow down, and actually receive from the universe, we're not going to see the magic in our life. We're not going to notice the magic in our life. We may not even feel like we have magic in our life because we feel out of touch and out of control and, not being able to, you know, control the situation. And we have to be able to be at peace with knowing that if we trust our intuition and follow it, that it's going to take us to magical places. And so that is what the Sisters Enchanted has taught me, is how to listen to that inner voice, how to trust yourself, how to make time to be yourself. So you're not just Abby's mom. You're Jayme May Bright again. You get to be you again. You get to remember what it's like to have your own identity again. That is what the Sisters Enchanted gave me. It gave me back me. And so taking these two groups whose I'm actually really shocked I don't have one of their shirts on currently. Oh, speak of the devil, my oldest is calling. I'm going to pause this and we'll continue. All right. So that was a nice little break to talk to Abby, which actually makes for a good segue into one of the things I would like to feature every week is going to be called the magic moment of the week. And this is when I will share with you something that happened in the last week that I just find to be exceptionally magical for some reason. So let's start with our first magic moment of the week. The magic moment of this week involves Abby. Her calling me during the recording of this podcast was a little bit magical, but this is a little bit more magical of a moment that I'm going to share with you now. So Abby was 7 when Daniel and I got together. And she is what I would say a little bit resistant to me being someone. She wanted it just to be me and her. And I get that. I get how a 7-year-old girl just wants it to be her and mom, especially after what she went through with her dad. I don't think that if I were her, I probably would have wanted another one myself. But Daniel and I have been together for 15 years, and you would think that at some point during this 15 years that she would realize that it is not just a phase, that he is staying. But she never did, at least not until recently. Now that she's an adult, I see her love for him. I really do, much more than when she was a teenager, that's for sure. But the magic moment involves kind of a long extended moment, but it started with her taking Daniel to go see a rave at Red Rocks on Saturday night. So, like I said, she was very, very, very resistant to Daniel being in our lives. And to see her come full circle to where she not only wanted to spend time with him, but two, paid for him to go, three, not just wanted to be him, she did. She wanted him to be there. She wanted him to be there with her for this race. And she got fucked up because that's what 22-year-olds do to rape. I get it. I've been there. I've done that. I'm not judging whatsoever. But Daniel was like, one, I'm driving. Two, I have no desire to be fucked up with a bunch of 20-year-olds. And it was funny because he's got all kinds of stories from the rave. But they had a great time. Abby made him little bracelets that they call candy. They're like little pony bracelets that like one of them said holy guacamole instead of holy guacamole, since everybody's on holy at raves and stuff. But she gave him a pashmina to wear, which he wore home, which is now mine. So Abby, if you're listening to my podcast, just know you're not ever getting that back. I'm taking over it. It's mine now. But the fact that she wanted him to go was magical in and of itself. Then the next day, he came home, like he drove them. So Red Rocks is like 2.5 hours away from here. So he left at like noon, went and got Abby and her friend. They went up to Denver to Red Rocks, and then he brought them back to her apartment, and then he came home. So it was like 3 o'clock in the morning when he got home. And oh my gosh, she brought me Whataburger taquitos, which made up for the whole fact that he was gone because you can love me with food. I'm fine with that. Like a taquito goes a long way with me. But he came home and he came in and he was just, you could tell he had such a good time and that they genuinely really enjoyed spending the time together. And this is honestly the first thing that I can think of that voluntarily they both did to spend time together. It wasn't something that I initiated or a situation that they were forced upon. This was something they both chose. And to me, have your 22-year-old kid take their parent, to a rave is magical. And then it got better. So he comes home like 3 o'clock in the morning. He ends up sleeping in on Sunday. And like midday, Abby lets me know that they're going to come down to Pueblo because they live about an hour away. And they were going to come down here, eat at Pizza Ranch because they love Pizza Ranch. And she's like, are y'all going to be home? And come by. And I was like, yes, we're going to be home. Come on by. So didn't really think much of it. She comes over. You can tell she's like completely hung over from the rave the night before. It's just that whole, I don't want to be doing this energy was coming off of her. But what she did want was to come by and tell me that she loved me and to give me a hug. And hey, this is my other child. This is Rocky. He's my big boy. Yeah. He'll, like I said, I will keep this real. This is my real life. I'm not going to put my dog outside because we're talking. So if he comes up and wants to be a part of it, he's going to be a part of it because he's part of my life. But so the next day, magical things are happening. One, my adult child wanted to come spend time with me. When I was 22 years old, I can tell you right now, I could have been next door to my parents' house, not just in town, next door. And I would have been like, all right, let's get out of here. Because the last person on earth that I wanted to spend my Sunday afternoon with was my mother. So it was very magical to me that my daughter not only wanted to spend time with me, but just wanted to come by and give me a hug and tell me that she loved me. That is magical. But it gets even better because she was wearing a sweatshirt that she had bought at the rave the night before. I was wearing a shirt that I got from Timu that says Buffalo Bills lotion on it. It's one of my favorite shirts. But she looks at me, she looks at what we're wearing. She's like, Mom, we have on the exact same color. I was like, right? We do. I said, did you know that today's color was orange? She's like, what? And what I do, I check every day on my witchy calendar what astrologically is the color of the day. And it was orange that day. So I wore my orange shirt on purpose. She showed up in her orange shirt because that's just how we vibe. And for her to be like, oh my gosh, I'm here. We're dressed the same. And it's the color of the day. It was like an epiphany in her light. Her light just like came on. And that was the magic moment, is when that light lit up in her. It was just this pure joy and happiness. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's not about something cataclysmically wonderful happening or, changing water into wine. It's not that kind of magic. It's the simple love that we find in our everyday situations, in our everyday relationships, in those interactions that we have with our kids and with our spouse and with ourselves and with our friends and with our coworkers, and the ability to slow down and see the synchronicity and see the magic and acknowledge it and be grateful for it, because we are all surrounded in magic every day. But until you take the time to slow down and pay attention to it, it all just seems like buzz around you. So it's kind of like, think about a radio. I'm not talking like Spotify. I'm talking about a real hands-on, turn the dial radio. So let's pretend that I have a radio right now and I start tuning it in. What's going to come on? Music, right? But before I started tuning it, we didn't hear music. Like, where is the music before you have the radio? Is it here? Is it not here? It is here. It's always here. It's all around us. The music is right here, but we have to tune into it. So if you don't tune into your magic, if you don't tune into your music, you don't tune into your station, it's all just buzz. It's all just bouncing around and you're not even paying attention. When you take your radio and tune it in to what you want to listen to, the music comes, the magic comes. And that's what this life, this making motherhood magical is all about. It's about tuning your radio to hear the frequency that's all around you all the time. So I invite you to come with me on this journey. We're going to be dropping episodes every Monday. I like Mondays because it's one of my favorite days. I'm going to record on Mondays. I'm going to distribute the podcast on Mondays. I'm hoping that I can bring some magical motherhood moments to Mondays. And so I hope that you will join me. I distribute the podcast through Libsyn, so it will be available on all of the major podcast carriers, but also a lot of minor ones. So hopefully you are able to find it. And obviously, if you've listened this far, you did find it. So thank you for finding it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing it. I appreciate you sharing. If you share it with one person, that might make a difference in that one person's life. And that's all I'm trying to do. If I can help one person every episode, my job here is done. That's all I want. One person to find one magical thing about their week. And I feel like this is a successful podcast. So come with me. Let's do this. Let's be okayest together. Let's be magical together. Let's make some moments together. And let's share this. Let's share this love of life with everyone. Because isn't that what it's really all about? It's about love. It's about loving each other. It's about loving ourselves. It's about loving our lives. So join me. Let's do this. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, any concerns, email me. Ask at JaymeMayBright.com. That's the email to send it to. Ask me anything. Tell me anything. I'm here. I'm here for you and you and you and me. So let's do this. Have a great week. Thank you again. And I will see you next week on Monday for the next episode of Making Motherhood Magical. Y'all have a great week.